Egypt, Qatar, Israel and the US reach an agreement on detainee release under ceasefire deal. Hamas announces plans to release the bodies of 4 detainees, while 6 others will be freed on Saturday. And the Palestinian National Council denounces the brutal treatment and torture of Palestinian detainees in Israeli prisons. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. I'm Hani Saif and we begin this bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. A breakthrough in negotiations and talks between Egyptian, Qatari, Israeli and US delegations in Cairo have successfully concluded. A well-informed source confirmed to Al Qahira News channel that Egyptian and Qatari mediation efforts have secured an agreement for the release of the remaining Israeli and Palestinian detainees. The exchange is set to take place on Saturday as part of the ongoing ceasefire agreement. This development marks a significant step in the diplomatic efforts to stabilize the region and implement the terms of the truce. Hamas has announced plans to release the bodies of 4 detainees, while 6 others who are still alive will be freed on Saturday. According to Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya, among those set for release are Hisham al-Sayyid and Avera Mengistu, who were held in Gaza before the outbreak of the war. The bodies to be released include members of the Abibas family. Al-Hayya made the announcement during a televised speech, but no further details were provided on the logistics of the transfer. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has confirmed that Israel will initiate negotiations on the second phase of the detainees deal. Israeli media also reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will hold a security consultation today. Netanyahu has rejected Hamas' request to link the release of the remaining hostages to ending the war. Israel's cabinet meeting has concluded yesterday without reaching a decision on the second phase of the Gaza agreement. Prime Minister Netanyahu reaffirmed his firm stance against allowing the Palestinian Authority to govern Gaza, emphasizing his commitment to US President Donald Trump's plan for the territory's future. The Commissioner General of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, has warned of the agency's potential collapse due to Israeli Knesset laws targeting its funding. Commissioner Philippe Lazzarini stressed that the agency's dissolution would create a dangerous void in providing essential services, posing a threat to regional and global stability.
Our operation in the occupied Palestinian territory will be crippled as legislation passed.
The Palestinian National Council has denounced the brutal treatment and torture of Palestinian detainees in Israeli prisons, calling it a retaliatory policy aimed at breaking their spirit and depriving them of basic human rights. The Council emphasized that these violations contradict international conventions, particularly the Fourth Geneva Convention. It urged the international community to take immediate action and called for an independent, fact-finding committee to investigate these abuses. U.S. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has said that there was a very little appetite for the U.S. to take over Gaza in any way, shape or form. Graham, speaking to reporters in Tel Aviv after meetings with Israeli officials as part of a bipartisan U.S. Senate delegation, noted progress on a Middle East peace plan. Democrat Richard Bluntmill added that discussions with Jordan's King Abdullah II revealed Arab states could offer Trump a realistic alternative plan.
Bottom line is that no one expects Israel to do.
And for more analysis on this story, we now move to Selma in our newsroom. Selma.
Thank you, Hani. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the editor-in-chief of Al-Shuruq newspaper, Egyptian ambassador, Mr. Ahmed El-Din Hussein. Mr. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And let me first start by asking you, what were the key factors that led to the breakthrough in negotiations between Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and the United States?
Peace be upon you all.
Sir, I was asking you, what were the key factors that led to the breakthrough in negotiations between Egypt, Qatar, Israel, and the United States?
The main factors that contributed to overcome the obstacles, the effort by Egypt and Qatar, along with the American role, that we may say that forced Israel to move forward instead of stalling or the extension of the first phase and not to move on for the second phase. Thanks to the talks in Cairo that announced that they might have a release of alive prisoners or bodies in return for the Palestinian people who are in jail. And this would lead to move forward through the second phase instead of the installment by Israel of not entering the process of the second phase.
Mm-hmm. So, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected linking the hostages exchange to the end of the war. How will this be reflected on the second phase of negotiations from your point of view?
I think that would reflect negatively. The only sole paper on the hand of Hamas is the captives. So Netanyahu wanted simply to release all the hostages instead of vowing to have the full withdrawal agreed upon on the 19th of January. So no one has have a reason to give the whole cards into the hands of his enemy and to agree of all these things. Netanyahu wanted to have the full release of Gaza and go back to continue the war in Gaza and not to withdraw from the Gaza Strip as he did in Lebanon, and that he vowed to withdraw and rejected later on. This is the sole scenario played by Netanyahu. Wanted to get all the gains, get a free release of the prisoners, to have a presence in Gaza Strip and appease the far right in the coalition. Unfortunately, and this was due to the limitless support from the new Trump administration.
Now, regarding Israel's refusal to allow the Palestinian Authority to govern Gaza, What are the potential consequences of this, and how does this align with the U.S. President Donald Trump's plan?
Naturally, there is a full integration of what Trump requested of displacement of Palestinian and with what is Netanyahu is doing. He is realizing that the return of the Palestinian Authority or the president of Hamas means protecting the cause alive. Therefore, any Palestinian person, either from Hamas or any authority, wishes to the continuation of the Palestinian presence and opposing the American plan of displacement of the Palestinian. The point is why Netanyahu insisted to reject any Palestinian administration, either it is affiliated to Hamas or others. So remember that Netanyahu tried to establish what is mean the personnels of the tribes, and this plan too was opposed by the Palestinian and Hamas, and therefore Netanyahu will try to obstacle any Palestinian entity, particularly if the Palestinian Authority would mean the revival of the two-state solution and has only one opportunity and chance, which is in the Gaza Strip or Gaza.
Now, Senator Lindsey Graham has said that there is not much support in the U.S. Senate for any American involvement in Gaza's administration. What are the key concerns driving this reluctance? What are the key concerns driving U.S. reluctance, as stated by Senator Lindsey Graham, who said that there is not much support in the U.S. Senate for any American involvement in Gaza's administration?
Absolutely, it is a great progress if any American presence directly in Gaza, either administration or troops, is with the highest stakes. Look into the previous experience, and particularly in the half of the 80s in Lebanon. Therefore, some of the senators, particularly the Democrats and the Republican senators, can have a great concern of the American proposal of the depopulation of Gaza and pose more threat to in the region. These are reasonable concerns as they contradict with the international law and could be named as war crimes, as a threat for the very historical area in Palestine.
From Cairo, that was Editor-in-Chief of Al-Shuluq newspaper, Egyptian Ambassador, Mr. Ahmed El-Din Hussein. Thank you so much for joining us here on Qnews. And now we're going to move back to Hani in the studio.
Thank you, Salma. The Tulkarm Governorate has reported that the Israeli army has threatened to demolish 16 homes in the besieged Tulkarm refugee camp, which has been under siege for 26 days. Additionally, approximately 16,000 Palestinians have been displaced from the Nur Shams and Tulkarm refugee camps in the West Bank. Israeli occupation forces have continued the aggression on the city of Tulkarm and its camp for the 23rd consecutive day, and on Nur Shams camp for the 10th day amidst Israeli escalation. At the same time, the occupation forces continue to close the gate of the Jabara checkpoint at the southern entrance of the city of Tulkarm for the 11th consecutive day, isolating the city from the villages and towns of Al-Kafriyat and the rest of the West Bank governorates. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has announced the death of a 10-year-old child who succumbed to injuries sustained in an Israeli airstrike on the town of Qabatiyya, south of Jenin, 2 weeks ago. The attack, carried out by an Israeli drone on February 1st also killed 2 young men. This brings the total number of Palestinian casualties in Jenin to 26 since the beginning of the ongoing Israeli offensive a month ago. The Israeli peace movement, Peace Now, has revealed that Israeli authorities have begun construction procedures for 974 new settlement units in the illegal Efrat settlement south of the Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. The movement warned that Netanyahu's government is imposing facts on the ground that threaten prospects for peace. Meanwhile, Muayyad Shaben, head of the Palestinian Colonization and Wall Resistance Commission, warned that this expansion aims to isolate Bethlehem from Jerusalem as part of the Greater Jerusalem Plan. China has sent its first batch of emergency humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, providing much-needed relief to local residents. A shipment of 12,000 food packages departed from Jordan on Tuesday as part of a larger Chinese aid effort. In total, China is sending 60,000 food packages to Gaza, with deliveries scheduled in 6 batches through Jordan's land ports, 2 batches per week. Upon arrival, the aid will be distributed by partner organizations of the Jordan-based Hashemite charity organization to ensure it reaches those in need. Chinese ambassador to Egypt, Liao Liqiang, has reaffirmed that a 2-state solution is the only viable way to break the cycle of conflict between Israel and Palestine. Speaking at the 4th high-level meeting of the Global Alliance for the implementation of the 2-state solution in Cairo, Liao, who also serves as China's representative to the Arab League, expressed Beijing's deep concern over the situation in Gaza. Liao emphasized the importance of international efforts to ensure the full and continuous implementation of the ceasefire agreement, stressing that Gaza is an inalienable part of Palestinian territory. He called for any future agreements or arrangements regarding Gaza to respect the will of the Palestinian people, adhere to international law, and align with the United Nations resolutions. And now we move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
The Lebanese presidency has announced its intention to appeal to the United Nations Security Council to enforce Israel's immediate withdrawal from southern Lebanon. Lebanon considers the continued Israeli presence as an occupation and affirms its right to use all means to secure a full withdrawal. The government reiterated its commitment to UN Resolution 1701 and stated that the Lebanese army is prepared to take full security control along the internationally recognized borders. Israeli media has reported that the Israeli army is increasing its troop deployment along the border with Lebanon to 3 times its previous level. The move is aimed at countering Hezbollah's attempts to reposition itself in southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, France has insisted on a complete Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon as soon as possible. The Lebanese armed forces have deployed in 11 southern towns and border locations south of the Litani River in coordination with the International Committee. The army has been conducting engineering surveys, clearing roads, and disposing of unexploded ordnance, urging residents to follow military directives in the area. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has announced that Israeli forces will remain stationed in 5 buffer zone locations in Lebanon. He stated that the military is committed to ensuring complete security along the northern border and will respond forcibly to any violations by Hezbollah. Villagers in southern Lebanon have prepared to return home as Israeli army withdraws under ceasefire agreement. Under a truce deal brokered by Washington in November, Israeli troops were granted 60 days to withdraw from southern Lebanon, where they had waged a ground offensive against Lebanon since the early October. That deadline was extended to February 18th, but Israeli and Lebanese officials, as well as foreign diplomats, had anticipated that the military would retain some troops on parts of the Lebanese side of the border. The Israeli army has withdrew from southern Lebanese towns early today, but its forces remained in 5 border points. According to the Lebanese state news agency, the Israeli army pulled out from the towns of Blida, Yarun, Marun al-Ras, Mais al-Jabal, Hawla, Markaba, Odyssia, Kfar Killa, and Wazani. Lebanese army forces entered the liberated towns and launched operations to clear up bombs and earth mounds, the broadcaster said. The United States has carried out a precision airstrike targeting a senior member of Al-Qaeda in Syria. President Donald Trump has confirmed that U.S. forces conducted the strike over the weekend. The U.S. military announced that the operation took place a day earlier, on February 15th, in northwest Syria. Officials have not released further details about the strike. However, U.S. forces have been actively targeting leaders of the militant group Hurras al-Din and an Al-Qaeda affiliate in ongoing efforts to disrupt its operations. In South Korea, suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol has appeared before the Constitutional Court for a hearing in his impeachment trial. The court is reviewing charges that Yoon violated his constitutional duty by imposing martial law without justification. The trial began on December 27th, and key witnesses have been called to testify, including former Minister of Interior and Safety Lee Sang-min and National Security Advisor Oh Sink. Yoon was arrested last month and remains in detention as the proceedings continue. The court's ruling could have significant implications for the country's political landscape. In Russia, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has stated that Russian-US negotiations in Saudi Arabia might provide more clarity on a possible meeting between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. He added that there is no understanding on this question yet. Peskov again reiterated that President Putin has always said that Russia is ready for peace talks. US and Russian officials met in Riyadh for the highest level talks to date between the two former Cold War foes on ending the war in Ukraine. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. Egypt, Qatar, Israel and the US reach an agreement on a detainee release under the ceasefire deal. Hamas announces plans to release the bodies of 4 detainees, while 6 others will be freed on Saturday. And the Palestinian National Council denounces the brutal treatment and torture of Palestinian detainees in Israeli prisons. This concludes our news bulletin for now, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Q News EGY to stay informed. I'm Henny Saif and thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.